Next one, we have types of agriculture. So we have a few types. First one is about the input and land ratio. So how many input are put in versus the size of the land. So intensive farming means we have high input and output per unit of land. So for example, naturally you would think it is a relatively small farm size. So a bunch of labor, a bunch of capital, let's say greenhouse, a lot of machine. So a lot of input put in a small farm size. So that would be intensive farming. For example, terracing, paddy growing, you will see a lot of farm labor. Extensive farming is the total opposite. We have a very large farm with small or low input and output per unit of land because it's such so big. So, for example, pastoral farming or livestock rearing or grazing usually would be extensive farming because you need such a large farm or pasture land to let the animals to run around. So to let the livestock run around. Next one, we have the types of output. So usually three types. Arable, crops only. So there's no animal. Okay. For example, rice cultivation, growing fruits, corn, vegetables. These are arable farming. Tea leaves, coffee beans. These are all arable farming. Pastoral farming is farm animals only. For example, cattle, cow, livestock. Doesn't matter. As long as they are animals, it's pastoral farming. So usually they will be extensive most of the time. And then we have mixed farming. So we have both crops and livestock on the same farm. So for example, recently we have these things called rice duck farming. So it's rice cultivation with a flood irrigation, with ducks swimming around the paddy field. It's a type of organic farming because the rice will get, like the ducks will feed on the rice crops, and then the duck manure becomes nutrient for the rice. Okay, so it's a type of a sustainable agriculture. Yeah. Okay. So mixed farming means we have crops and livestock at the same time. Uses of output, we have subsistence and commercial. So subsistence means it's for self-consumption only. So let's say you have a small farm, or let's say you have a garden at home. You have a garden and you grow some vegetables. So you're not intend to sell those. You're just going to eat the tomatoes yourself, right? So this is subsistence farming. You still, or maybe you can say it's gardening to a certain degree. But let's say in a native environment, let's say tropical rainforest, the native people grow crops for feeding their own population, feeding the villagers. They are not sending the crops to a market in exchange for money. So those would be considered subsistence farming. Okay. Then there is the other type, commercial farming. They grow and raise animals with the only purpose of making money. Basically, we call those cash crops. So cash crops means you grow the crops for cash. As simple as that. Example would be banana, coffee beans, tea leaves, rubber tree, palm tree. So cash crops mean they make a lot of money selling it. Fruits are usually an example of that. Plantation would be one example. Plantation means it's a large farm growing a specific or several specific crops. Okay, for example, we have tree leaves plantation. It's a whole farm growing tree leaves. We have the vineyard is a type of plantation growing grapes. Yeah. So sedentary means the farmers stay in permanent land location. They stay there basically. So mostly arable farming because they have a piece of land as the farmland. They can't move the farmland, right? So they just stay there, build a farmhouse next to it, live there grow and just farm. Non-sedentary means they move around from time to time, mostly nomadic herding or shifting cultivation. It means the people or the farmers, we call it nomad. Nomadic herding, the farmers are called nomad. They are people moving around in search of water and pasture with their livestock. Example would be the Mongolian, right? Mongolbao, right? Mongolian camps, something like that. They have to be easy to move around, fast enough, and light enough. So non-sedentary. Then finally, we have level of technology. So low-tech farming means it is mostly relying on manual labor. Basic tool, let's say you have an axe, you have a plow, you have a water bucket, you have some animals to help irrigate. So those typical image of a farmer behind a cow or a farmer carrying a bucket of water, those would be low-tech farming. So not a lot of sophisticated technology. So rely on animals and manual labor. High-tech is highly specialized, mechanized, using machines, commercialized, so it's mostly commercial, large-scale farming. So they use a lot of hydrocarbon, basically fossil fuels, to power the machine. So for example, like a tractor, like a harvester, maybe they even have drones to spread pesticides, right? They even have an airplane to spread fertilizer and pesticide. There could even be some, like tractor nowadays, it's very big and it can be autonomous. You know, there are some autonomous tractor. It means that you don't have to be in the tractor. It's like playing remote, like robot cars, is it? You just have a controller, and then, or even you just set the autonomous tractor, it just roam around in the field, like automatically. So those would be high-tech farming, which is quite sophisticated and consume quite a lot of energy. Expensive, and it requires education, like know-how. Imagine if you're illiterate, like how can you operate a tractor? You don't even know what those button and lever are for. So chances are you're going to destroy the farm. Yeah. So it takes a certain level of literacy and skill to operate this machine. So in country with low education level, high illiteracy rate, it's unlikely that they will have high-tech farming, unless they are operated by transnational corporation, hiring the farm labor and giving them enough training. So transnational corporation, they can buy up like acres of land, and then they hire local people and they give them enough training. So usually they have supervisors who are literate, and they have people who train the local farm labor for some period of time, and those would be like semi and low skill. Like you don't need a degree to operate a tractor, right? So it's not like it takes months to get trained, like probably a few days. Once you know how to operate it, you know that it's always routine. So it's not very sophisticated job. So